In the bright, crisp morning of January 10, 2025, the industrial pulse of San Bernardino, California, hummed with its usual rhythm. For Yesenia Torres, known to everyone as Jessica, it was just another day of business, another step in the life she had meticulously built. At 44, she was a self-made entrepreneur who had turned a simple pallet company into a booming enterprise and amassed an impressive portfolio of commercial real estate. But beneath the surface of her success, a bitter conflict was raging. Jessica was entangled in a grueling 2-year divorce from her estranged husband, Sergio Ravialis. At the heart of their separation was a battle for millions of dollars in shared assets, a legal war fueled by resentment and greed. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a slow-burning fuse, inching closer to an explosion. That morning, as Jessica went about her day, she had no idea that the private war she was fighting was about to spill onto the streets in a shocking public act of violence that would change everything forever. Remember to like, share, and comment for more episodes from the Calendar of Crime. We're about to dive deep into this story of ambition, betrayal, and a fortune worth killing for. Before we get into the details, if you find this case as compelling as I do, please take a quick moment to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. And for those who want even more in-depth content, we're coming soon to Substack, so keep an eye out for that. Now let's get back to Jessica. She was known for her sharp business sense and her relentless work ethic. Friends and family described her as a woman who could see potential where others saw nothing. She started with a small pallet business, a venture that might seem unremarkable to some, but Jessica had vision. She understood the logistics, the supply chains, and the needs of local businesses. Through sheer determination, she grew her company, reinvesting profits and smartly diversifying into commercial real estate. She was respected, not just for her wealth, but for her journey. She was living the American dream, a testament to what hard work could achieve. On the other side of this fracturing partnership was Sergio Ravialis. Their marriage had started with promise, but as Jessica's empire grew, so did the cracks in their relationship. The divorce proceedings painted a picture of a man who felt he was being cut out of the fortune he believed he helped build. The legal documents were filled with accusations and counter-accusations, a tangled web of financial disputes over properties, bank accounts, and business ownership. The fight wasn't just about money. It was about control and, perhaps, a sense of entitlement. While Jessica was focused on moving forward and securing her future, Sergio seemed to be fixated on what he stood to lose. The morning of January 10th began like any other. Jessica arrived at one of her business properties in San Bernardino, ready to tackle the day's work. The area was a typical mix of warehouses and commercial lots, a place where business was done and life moved at a steady pace. Security cameras in the area were rolling, silently documenting the ordinary comings and goings. Jessica was seen on camera, speaking on her phone, seemingly unaware of any immediate danger. She was a woman in charge, navigating her complex life with the same confidence she applied to her business dealings. But this ordinary morning was about to take a dark and horrifying turn. As Jessica stood outside her property, a dark-colored SUV pulled up nearby. It wasn't an unusual sight in this industrial area. However, what happened next was anything but ordinary. A figure emerged from the vehicle, moving with a chilling sense of purpose. The footage, though grainy, captures the terrifying speed of the events. The individual, masked and cloaked in dark clothing, confronted Jessica. There was a brief, tense interaction, a moment frozen in time that would become the central focus of a massive investigation. The confrontation escalated in a matter of seconds. The assailant forced Jessica into the waiting SUV. It was a brazen abduction, carried out in broad daylight, in a public space. There were no shouts for help that anyone reported. No prolonged struggle visible on the footage. It was clinical, swift, and brutal. The SUV then sped away, vanishing from the camera's view, leaving behind an empty space where a successful businesswoman had stood just moments before. The scene was eerily quiet, the only evidence of the crime being the silent, looping footage on a security server and the sudden, terrifying absence of Jessica Torres. When Jessica didn't show up for her next appointment and couldn't be reached by phone, the alarm was raised. Her family, already on edge due to the acrimonious divorce, feared the worst, They knew the tension with Sergio was at an all-time high. They immediately contacted the police, and an investigation was launched. The discovery of the security footage turned a missing person case into a suspected abduction, and the investigation kicked into high gear. Detectives began piecing together the timeline, interviewing family, friends, and business associates. All roads, it seemed, led back to the bitter divorce and the man who stood to lose millions, Sergio Reveles. The police brought Sergio in for questioning. He denied any involvement, of course. But his story had holes, and his demeanor raised red flags. As investigators dug deeper, they began to uncover a trail of evidence that pointed directly at him. They learned that the financial dispute was even more intense than previously known. Millions of dollars were on the line, and Sergio was allegedly becoming increasingly desperate. Had he decided that if he couldn't have the money, nobody would? Was this a crime of passion, greed, or both? The search for Jessica became a frantic, round-the-clock effort. Her family made emotional public pleas, begging for her safe return. The community was on edge, shocked that such a violent crime could happen in their city in broad daylight. The media seized on the story. The successful businesswoman, the bitter divorce, the dramatic abduction captured on camera. It was a true crime saga playing out in real time. But as days turned into a week, hope began to fade. The question was no longer just where Jessica was, but what had happened to her in those critical moments after she was forced into that SUV. Then came the breakthrough. Investigators, meticulously tracking cell phone data and vehicle movements, were led to a remote, desolate area in the Mojave Desert. It was a place where secrets could be easily buried. And it was there in that vast, unforgiving landscape that they made a grim discovery. The search for Yesenia Torres had come to a tragic end. Her body was found, and the case officially transitioned from an abduction to a homicide investigation. The community's worst fears were realized. Jessica, the vibrant, determined entrepreneur, had been murdered. With the discovery of Jessica's body, the case against Sergio Reveles solidified. The circumstantial evidence was piling up. Investigators believed they could trace his movements from San Bernardino to the desert. They began to build a narrative of a man consumed by anger and greed, who allegedly plotted to eliminate his estranged wife to solve his financial problems. The theory was simple and chilling. Sergio couldn't win the divorce battle in court, so he decided to end it permanently on his own terms. The arrest came swiftly. Sergio Reveles was charged with the abduction and murder of his wife, Yesenia Torres. The man who had once shared a life and a business empire with her was now accused of being her killer. The legal battle over assets had morphed into a criminal trial for murder. The court proceedings would be the final chapter in this tragic story, a fight for justice for Jessica and her family. The trial was a media spectacle. The prosecution laid out its case, presenting the security footage, the cell phone data, and the financial motives. They painted Sergio as a cold, calculating man who saw his wife not as a person, but as an obstacle to his wealth. They argued that he had orchestrated the entire event, a desperate and violent act to avoid a divorce settlement that he felt was unfair. The defense, in turn, tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that no one actually saw Sergio commit the crime, and that the police had zeroed in on him from the beginning, ignoring other potential leads. But the weight of the evidence was substantial. The jury listened intently to the testimony, saw the heartbreaking photos, and watched the chilling video of Jessica's last conscious moments. They heard from her family, who spoke of her kindness and her drive, and of the fear she had begun to express in the final months of her life. In the end, the jury was convinced. Sergio Reveles was found guilty of the first-degree murder of his wife. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The price of betrayal, in this case, was absolute. Yesenia Torres lost her life, a vibrant existence cut short by greed. Her family lost a daughter, a mother, and a sister. Sergio Reveles lost his freedom, destined to spend the rest of his days behind bars, a prisoner of his own violent choices. The story of Yesenia Torres is a tragic reminder of how financial disputes can escalate, how love can turn to hate, and how the pursuit of money can lead to the ultimate act of betrayal. Her legacy is not just in the businesses she built, but in the cautionary tale she left behind. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next case.